I was wondering, you mentioned a little bit about your upcoming novel. It's about cheerleaders, and it's set in the not too distant past. It's actually in your lifetime.
Yes, right, yeah.
I was wondering if you could say anything about it and whether or not that posed any unique challenges other than writing, say, about the early 30s or the 50s,
right.
a time that you lived and remember.
Right, yes, yes.
Is he conflating the next two books?
There's two books, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, they're both contemporary, yeah. The cheerleading one is one I'm working on now. I can't believe I'm talking about it. The cheerleading novel. It's not what you think. But the one that's coming out in this summer is called The End of Everything, and it's set in the 1980s. When I wrote it, I thought it was set now, and when I sent it to the editor, she said, no, this is the 1980s. But apparently I think that's contemporary, and apparently it's now historical. It's set from the point of view of a 13-year-old girl, and which I'd always wanted to do, and I was 13 in the 80s, and so that's clearly why it's the 80s, you know. But it's set in the suburbs, and it's a missing. Her best friend disappears at the beginning of the book, and so she's. And it's set in the suburbs, and I grew up in the suburbs in Michigan, and it's very inspired by that. And at first, you know, I was trying to experiment, you know, could I do something that wasn't in the mid-century? And I was just completely stupefied as to how to write it, because I couldn't figure out how my style would go. And but then what I sort of realized is that to a 13-year-old girl, life is noir. Everything is big. Emotions are big. Lust overcomes you. You know, everything matters unbelievably. Everything is mysterious. You don't have any power. Everything seems to, you know, there is double crossing. You feel like everyone's out to betray you. And life is filled with this sort of shimmering mystery and possibility and danger. So once I sort of realized that about it and sort of remembered being 13 that way, which is, of course, when I was the biggest noir fan in the world, I was sort of able to sort of do suburban 80s noir somehow, and it seemed to work. You know, how it works reading it, I don't know, but it seemed to work writing it. It felt like I was writing very much in the world I'd set up, even though the accoutrements were different. You know, the one thing that is quite different, though, is that I have no dishware at all. I could care less about 1980s dishware.
Corral.
There's no references to Corral. Instead, the focus for me was the world of suburban. If any of you grew up in the suburbs, backyards in the summer nights, the mystery of it, the sort of the way that sound. This is pre everything being air conditioned, the way sound would carry through houses in the suburbs at night, and you would hear, I remember hearing, you know, the Detroit Tigers radio broadcast, you know, 5 houses away, and someone's having a fight down the block, and what's going on there, and that sort of mystery, you know, that felt very noir to me. What's going on in the next apartment? What is that sound? That sounds like an ice pick, you know, like the same kind of thing. So that was sort of the leap I made for myself.
And did you want to say anything about the cheerleaders?
Well, the cheerleaders is set now, so now that I actually have, and I don't even want to say this out loud, text messages are referred to in it, which is, you know, but what it's sort of a version to me of Queen Pin. It's about a cheerleading squad and a power struggle. I am so not selling this, by the way, but cheerleading now is not what it was in my day even. It's not girls dancing with pom-poms. It's this very dangerous sport. And these girls climb on top 15 feet in the air, and they leap what would surely be to their death. And what I think is that this shows this sort of depravity of teenage girls, which I firmly believe in, that there's a darkness at the center of them, and that this desire is fully enacted among cheerleaders, because they're also like the queen bitches, you know, you know, and so this is sort of a power struggle among cheerleaders, and with, you know, their dark side is right out in the open, you know. So it's sort of, you know, It's among my darkest books, but it is, yes, about cheerleading. And I've learned so much about pyramids and how you build them. And, yeah, I don't know how it happened. But it was inspired by, just to give my noir credentials, it was inspired by a real life case. Some of you may remember about 2 years ago, there was this cheerleading coach in North Carolina who was accused, she was having an affair with a National Guard recruiter in her school. And so she was bringing her cheerleaders to these motel parties with the other National Guardsmen and getting into all kinds of trouble, as you can guess. And so it reminded me of a kind of a noir thing, that she's sort of like the queen pin, and she's inducting these young women into sort of her world on the fringes. And so that was sort of the original inspiration.
I think we're going to have to start wrapping up now, but I did want to say, just with Valentine's Day coming on us, I know that you have 4 novels published, and your husband has 2 novels published.
Yeah.
And all 4 novels are, all 4 of your novels are dedicated to him, and both of his novels are dedicated to you.
Yes.
And I don't know if there's more romance than you get within the noir milieu than having all of your work dedicated to your spouse.
It's true. We really, he is the one who gave me my first Raymond Chandler novel, and I gave him his first James Cain novel. So we've always sort of supported each other. He does not write crime. If he did, that might be the end of things. He writes literary fiction of different kinds, but yeah, we really sort of understand the weirdness of books. We're both book lovers. We met in graduate school, so I think that's the bind.